This is the Microsoft Cloud Show, episode 204, where today CJ and I are going to catch up on the latest news from Microsoft, a little bit of cloud news, and a plethora of picks. Recorded live July 13th, 2017. What if you could take any process your teams use to get work done and make it happen automatically? What if you could save countless hours and help people work better together? Nintex can make that happen. With the Nintex platform, work flows from person to person, system to system, to the cloud and back. And it flows in and out of the tools that you use every day. With Nintex, work flows so your teams can work smarter, work faster, and be more connected than ever. Good afternoon, CJ.
Wait, we're doing picks?
We're doing picks. We have a plethora. Do you know what a plethora is?
A plethora. Yeah, great. That sounds exciting.
It does sound exciting.
How are you anyway?
I'm holding on. I have got quite a challenge over the next 2 days, and it's been building up for the last few days. By the time everybody hears this, it'll be long over, but I'm doing something I have never done before that has really got me very anxious. I'm in charge of, they call it the computer guy, but I'm basically in charge of setting up and executing a swim meet that consists of 7 swim teams and about 1,000 more than 1,000 kids over the course of 2 days locally. And it is, you know, when you go to do a presentation and it's a big presentation and you've never done it and you just get you have that anxiety going, and there's no way you can just kind of hit pause because you've got hundreds or thousands of people looking at you.
Yeah, you're going live.
Imagine doing that not just for an hour and just telling yourself, you know what, even if it's bad, it's only bad for an hour and then I'm out of there and they just may not have me again. That's the worst thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, imagine doing that for 2 full days straight and having all of these families and stuff that deal with their kids and their times and stuff. So if basically hits the fan.
Yeah. And you know, when it comes to children, there's lots of angry parents to deal with.
They've already been angry too. They've already got...
I'm not trying to make it worse, but definitely don't it up.
Oh man, it is. You have no... I have spent so much time documenting. Here's what I'm going to do. I've done so much more stuff than I've normally done of documentation. Our listeners can't see this, but that binder that you see right there on the screen, CJ, those are the notes that I've been writing and typing out and everything, and like procedures and all that crap.
Is that your binder full of instructions?
It's my binder of instructions,
nice.
Yes. I have binders full of them.
Hey, well, whatever you do, don't apply Windows updates right before, or be the person that screwed up Julia's demo.
Oh my God. Yeah.
At Inspire.
Yeah. You want to tell, I don't know if our listeners picked up on that. That was... Wow.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't watched the keynote from day one, it's cringeworthy. Of course, she did very well. Julia White, who I used to work for at Microsoft for a while, actually, who's just a kick-ass demoer in general. She had some demo fails, and apparently it was all because of some Windows updates that were applied earlier in the day.
And it wasn't so much that it was just Windows updates that were applied, but this is one of the 3 big Microsoft conferences, and one individual, I don't know his name. I don't want to know. I know his first name, but I don't really want to know his name. I don't want to really go crazy at him or anything. But one individual apparently thought that it was a good idea to run Windows Update on the primary and backup machines for one of the biggest keynotes at one of the biggest Microsoft conference, one of the 3 biggest annual conferences for Microsoft. Ran all those Windows updates between the last final rehearsal and the keynote.
Yeah. Unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. I don't know. I've had to produce those shows before and work on those demos and things, and you literally do not touch those machines. Like, once you've gone through final setup of the demo and you've got everything absolutely perfect, everything from, the data in the demo through to the position of the windows on the screen so that the demo presenter knows when they tap an icon where it is exactly where it's going to show up, what size it's going to be, whether it's maximized to the left, to the right, all of that has to be perfect. And every single time it has to be the same. So you don't even mess with window position, let alone apply a whole bunch of updates.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that really sucked. But hey, well, I hope your swim meet goes better than that.
Oh, man.
If I get a text with just a single sad crying face from you, I'll know that you've had to unfortunately leave Florida and you're wearing an adult diaper and driving to Vegas for the weekend.
Oh man, it is, and I think I have everything. I think I have everything set. And for the technical people, that are here, let me just put you a little bit of perspective here. You have pad. I'm sure people watch the Olympics and you watch swimming. You've got timers, little pads that are up against the lane at the end of the lanes. Those are all connected to a wiring harness. The people at the end of the lanes have plungers in their hands that they hit like a little button. And then they also have stopwatches. And the buttons that they push on the plungers and the pads all go to a system, to one computer that takes all the timing data. And then the stopwatches, people write those down on sheets. All that goes into one computer, and then I run the other machine. I have one person that's doing that for me, and then I have the other machine that pulls all the times in, manages disqualifications. If there's timing discrepancies, people scream at me. The meet's over. Then I've got something like 20 minutes to finalize the meet, figure out the scores, figure out the high point person for the thing, do a bunch of other awards and print out all this stuff and hand it over to everybody for them to prepare for the award ceremony. That's like 30 minutes after the meet. And it's like, you just sit there in the pucker factor like, God, I hope shit doesn't hit the fan.
Yeah. I have on the whole performance during presentation thing, I see where you're going. Like, it is definitely super, super similar, right? In that regard, because you can't just say, oh, I'm out. But I've got a great story about, Richard Riley used to be on the SharePoint team I used to work for. He did a demo at a SharePoint conference once that Bill Gates was presenting at. And he had to walk out on stage with Bill Gates and have a quick chat with him and then do this demo. And he was absolutely kicking himself with nervousness, right? Like, of all of your moments, walking out on stage with Bill Gates is kind of a big deal, right? And so right before he went on stage, Tom Rizzo, who was the GM of SharePoint at the time, was just like, hey, Richard. And Richard turned around right as he was about to walk up on stage, and he just put his hand on his shoulder and said, whatever you do, don't f it up. and then patted him on the back and let him walk out on stage. And Richard was so bamboozled by this comment from his boss that it sort of just totally, flicked his mind away from being nervous. And as he walked out on stage, and then he crushed it, of course. Yeah, there you go.
I'm prepared. I'm as prepared as I can be. Unfortunately, I didn't get nearly as much work done this week or last weekend that I thought I was going to. But I don't feel like I'm coming in hot. So it's nuts, man. It's nuts. But anyway, how are you doing after my long rant there? How are you doing now?
You'll have to report back. I was up in Victoria in Canada for a friend's birthday, and had a nice little trip away. So pretty good, actually. Yeah.
Awesome.
We're, like I said, I think last time I mentioned we're doing a whole bunch of things for Ignite this year. And so we started down on that track, and we're kind of getting things underway for that. And so we're busy at work, and it's going to be heads down for a while, but hopefully we'll be able to come up for some air around just before Ignite.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah. The
Microsoft Cloud Show is sponsored by Valid.nl. Valid's motto is stay ahead. Its mission is to enable its customers to excel in their business through the innovative use of IT. Valid is always on the lookout for new colleagues. Are you interested in all things happening in Azure, whether in infrastructure, SQL Server, Office 365, BI, SharePoint, or .NET? Look them up on Valid.nl. Hey, today what we wanted to do is we have a handful of news that we want to run through.
Yeah.
And then we have a handful of links that we want to run through as well. We got mostly Microsoft news and a little bit of containery stuff, a little bit of AWS stuff, but mostly Microsofty news. So why don't I kind of pitch it over to you and see what would your first big news item of the ones that we have listed here that you'd want to share with our listeners?
Well, I think kind of not so technical, but definitely will impact what we talk about on this show is the big Microsoft reorg that landed. This has been in the rumor mill for months and months, pretty much ever since Kevin Turner left Microsoft. KT, as is affectionately known, or not very affectionately known as, used to run basically all of the sales side of Microsoft's business. So everybody that's out there in the field, Microsoft selling software, how Microsoft packaged it and sold it to customers, enterprise agreements, the whole nine yards. He used to run all that side of the business and responsible for basically all of the revenue Microsoft made, right? Like in a nutshell. He left not too long ago. I mean, I guess a wee while ago now, a bunch of months ago, 6 months, maybe 5 months, something like that. he was absolutely hardline. So the guy could drive a number like nobody you've ever seen. And he wasn't very well liked for it by the people that worked for him, obviously, or the Microsoft field sales teams and all that. But boy, oh boy, could he drive a revenue number, and he crushed it. Basically, the entire time he was at Microsoft, got his number and was pretty much responsible for a lot of the revenue growth at Microsoft. Anyway, he left. He stayed around for a while after Satya became CEO, and eventually he's gone. And so ever since then, it's been kind of rumored that this reorg was coming to sort of reboot the way Microsoft does its sales process and teams and organization. And so that landed this week, along with the news that about 3,000 layoffs were going to happen around the world, mostly in the sales and mostly outside of the US in terms of percentages. But basically it's a
Sorry, I'm laughing. And one guy that runs Windows updates.
Yeah. 3001. Yeah, basically it's a reorg of how Microsoft sales teams are structured. And in a nutshell, it sort of boils down to two things. In the past, the way it dealt with partners in those teams was very fragmented across a bunch of different things. There was DX and there was partner teams and all this sort of stuff. And so now they've got this new team called the One Commercial Partner Team. And so there'll be one throat to choke if you're a partner and dealing with Microsoft. And then the other one is just the way the sales teams are structured. There were a bunch of different roles. There were technical specialists, TSPs and SSPs and account managers and all this sort of stuff. They're sort of rejigging that a little bit and putting in customer success folks as well. So it's kind of a long time coming, and Microsoft's had the old structure for, close to, I think, 10 years or so. So it was time that they sort of rebooted the way they work. The sales teams were very structured around EAs and selling perpetual software is where it kind of came from. So obviously now moving to subscriptions and cloud-based stuff being the focus, it was kind of time to reset how the sales teams were remunerated in gold and structured. So yeah, no great surprises there. Whether it will have any impact on our day-to-day lives, probably not. Maybe a little bit in the partner world. Being able to partner with Microsoft should get a little easier. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a big change for Microsoft. It's nice that it's a long time coming, like you said, but it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense from a company that's trying to shift to go more to the cloud space and stuff. So how will customers kind of see this difference? I guess that kind of a bit remains to be seen. Things, I guess, should be getting a better story, but it just shows like how much their focus is really in this area too, on the cloud stuff. So
yeah, I mean, if it all goes to plan, customers won't be impacted, right?
Yeah.
They'll just see probably the same account manager, maybe a couple of other different roles. So, one of the other big things is the sales teams are going to get remunerated on consumption, not on purchase, right? So it used to be that Microsoft seller used to get, if they sold a big EA for a lot of Azure subscription revenue, it didn't matter if the customer didn't use what they bought, but now they're going to be remmed on what they actually use.
Oh, so that is a big deal. That is a big difference. I missed that part because I know in the past I've even done projects for Microsoft when you weren't trying to sell them anything, but it's more you were just trying to teach them how to use what they already had access. Like, for example, if you sell an Office 365 license and you only use Exchange, but you're not using SharePoint, but you paid for the SharePoint piece, then they're going to get measured on that kind of stuff, right? So I don't know if I'm being exactly correct, but you can think about it along those lines. I mean, it was part of what you bought.
Oh, absolutely. And the idea is that if you sell people the stuff and they don't use it, then they're not going to re-up their subscription. So you've got to get it being used. One of the other things is field sellers are going to either be remunerated or gold on selling partner solutions as well. So you'll be able to get quota relief or sales quota relief for selling partner products, complementary stuff, things like that. Kind of a big change.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, nice.
A lot of changes there. It's all for the better. It's all for the good.
I think so, yeah. Unfortunately, people lose their jobs in the process, but that's kind of inevitable in a big company, unfortunately, every few years or every year, it seems. Yeah.
Things have to change.
Yeah, what do you got?
So another one I have here is around actually a big bit of news, is Microsoft has finally gone, I guess, GA with the Azure Stack. There's a title here by the Business Insider that had got a significant amount of press for it, is that Microsoft finally releases its secret weapon in the cloud wars with Amazon and Google, which is the Azure Stack. The idea here is that being able to take a subset of things with Azure and be able to run them on-prem in your own, basically making your own private cloud. Now, this only really works with specific hardware that Microsoft has worked with different vendors on to say, give them the thumbs up, say this works. Companies like Dell EMC, Lenovo, and HP Enterprise, all of those are now available for order today for September delivery. Cisco and I can't ever pronounce this Chinese company correctly, Huawei, I think, Huawei. One of the things that's nice about this is that it allows companies and organizations that do not have the ability to go to the cloud for whatever reason that is, geopolitical, technical, business rules, whatever it is, that they can still take advantage of some of the great features that they have inside of Azure using their own hardware. So things like virtual machines and web apps and functions. When we talked to Rima Nimi a couple of weeks ago, even things like Cosmos DB are going to eventually make its way into Azure Stack. So it's not for every customer. It's a great way to be able to take advantage of some of the Azure capabilities on-prem. It's also a great way for companies to start to move in a hybrid kind of sense, or to be able to move some of their workloads to an Azure model and then be able to migrate those things maybe down the road to Azure once either, like again, laws, regulations, or the company palette is different where they can move things to the cloud. It gives them that option. And the cool thing about it is that you don't see this as an offering from any of the other big public cloud vendors like Google or Amazon.
Yeah, I think there's offerings in this. You mentioned hardware, Dell EMC Cloud for Microsoft Azure Stack, Hewlett Packard Enterprise HPE ProLiant for Microsoft Azure Stack, and Lenovo Think Agile SX for Microsoft Azure Stack. If these guys have got one thing in common, it's the ability to name things strangely. But yeah, you're going to have to get hardware for this. It all comes bundled. And actually, interestingly, the way they're doing the charging model, billing is either based on how much you use Azure Stack or on how much computing capacity you use, depending on the model chosen and your plan. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I guess it's kind of similar to the way you do in Azure, so makes sense, I guess. But whether customers will be cool with that on-prem, I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think also Rackspace came out with a support offering around this stuff as well, so they're getting into this game as well. I think it's a big deal for customers because they want to build stuff like you would build on Azure, but they're not quite ready for the cloud in some cases, or a public cloud like AWS or Microsoft Azure. And they can go with vendors like Rackspace because plans are more customizable for them and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But I think it's big news, and it is Microsoft's secret weapon because they've got a foot in every enterprise around the world, and Dell and HP and Lenovo all do as well. So it's going to be hard for AWS to compete on this, I think.
Yeah, at least in the short term, it definitely is going to be. I mean, it's a significant investment to be able to go in this direction. Microsoft has been working on Azure Stack this isn't really news that it came out or that it was going GA. We knew this was coming. And we've known about Azure Stack for many years now. It's just taken a lot long. First, it was going to be use your own hardware. Then it was, nope, we got to make sure that it runs on specific hardware, all that stuff. So it was a big deal. And Microsoft's ability to work with specific vendors gives them an advantage over these other cloud providers that don't have that same level of long-term relationship that Microsoft has had for so many years. So
yeah, for sure.
We're really curious to hear from people who are going to be using Azure Stack. I'd love to find, if any of our listeners, if your organization is seriously considering Azure Stack or is, purchasing or rolling it out or have been testing it, we'd love to have you on the show to talk to you about, what your use case is and what, why you're keeping your cloud on-prem. Would that be like fog because it's closer to the ground? So this is like the fog, keeping your apps in the fog instead of keeping them in the cloud?
Yeah. Or maybe it's snow that's fallen or something. I don't know.
I like that. I actually like what I just came up with.
Maybe it's hailing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are thunderclouds. That's the office. Well, never mind.
Foggy cloud computing.
Yeah.
Gosh, we suck at these analogies.
Yeah. So what do you got for us? Let's move on.
Microsoft 365.
Oh.
So just when you thought you knew about all the 365s, ta-da! There's another one.
There's another one. Yes. So at Inspire, Satya Nadella unveiled Microsoft 365. And basically what this is Windows 10 plus Office 365 as a subscription. So for $20 a month,
It's okay. So first up, it's tailored at small and medium businesses. So up to 300 seats, but they basically say up to 300 users. And it basically takes the Office 365 Business Premium SKU and adds Windows plus security and management with Intune to it. So you'll be able to deploy machines that are all connected up to Intune and get access to Office 365 and all of those. So basically it's a licensing bundle. It's no new technology. As far as I understand it, all those things were already out, but you can buy it per seat for $20, which is pretty good. Now, what I understand is it's tailored at small and medium businesses. I don't believe you can do things like domain join these machines and do all that sort of stuff. So it's really tailored at a cloud-first type of SMB. I think it's a really good, solid, clear shot across Google's bow because it's Microsoft trying to leverage their strength in Windows and Office in the SMB space. So kind of interesting. The blog post, there's a lot of buzzword bingo going on here, but it becomes available August 1st. I think you can start purchasing it from August 1st, and it will be available in the fall. It will be GA in the fall of 2017 US, the US fall, I guess. Yeah, so a little later this year. Yeah, $20 per user per month. They also mentioned they've launched some apps to go along with this in Office 365 for small and medium-sized customers. Microsoft Connections, which is an email marketing service, similar to like MailChimp or Drip, but kind of very watered down in comparison to those best-of-breed solutions. But basically, so you can do mass mail-outs to your customers, track click-through rates, do all that sort of stuff, put people in campaigns, that sort of thing. Microsoft Listings, an easy way to publish your business information on top sites. So I think that's to like manage your business listings on things like Google and Bing and all that sort of stuff. And Microsoft Invoicing, a new way to create professional invoices and get paid fast. It's an app that basically you create invoices that integrates with PayPal and stuff so you can get paid that way. And I also believe that they've done integration with QuickBooks and things, so it sort of integrates with your accounting software too. So yeah, they've got some new app offerings for SMBs, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. Definitely very cool.
Yeah.
Another one that I have here is around Office 365, and this is from the Office blogs and the Office Dev blog, where they have announced nominations are now being accepted for the Office 2017 or the 2017 Office App Awards. What this is that it's a way for Microsoft to recognize the best partner add-ins and apps that leverage the Office platform. Nominations are open all the way through the August 25th. And winners will receive a promotion in the Office Store or recognition at Microsoft Ignite. So things that are eligible are newly published or updated add-ins since January the 1st of 2017. And they have to be hosted in the Office Store, App Source, Azure AD Gallery, or a leading mobile device app store like Google Play and Android apps, the App Store. Then it also says Windows Phone or generally available. That's kind of funny because I think I read something today or yesterday that said that they just dropped support for Windows Phone. So now if you have a Windows Phone in your hand, it is now officially unsupported from Microsoft.
Only Windows Phone 8.1 or below. Windows Phone 10 is not part of that category.
Oh, there is a Windows. I didn't know there was a Windows Phone 10.
Yeah, there is.
Oh.
Yeah. But it's only like
3 people?
Less than 20% of the deployed Windows phones or something.
So 2 people.
Correct.
So the award categories for this are most business value, overall, best overall app, best integration, best user experience, best mobile app, and the People's Choice Award.
Yes, I used to be involved in these when I was at Microsoft and on the 365 team. It's always fun to go through and check out all the apps and see what people are building. It's actually kind of surprisingly, I don't often go to the Office Store anymore, but it is interesting to see what goes in there. Like, there are some interesting apps. There's a lot of CRM type stuff, and yeah, you should go have another look because there's bloody thousands in there now.
That sounded like a name that was going to be going around. I don't often go to the Office App Store, but when I do, I don't find what I'm looking for. Or I do find what I'm looking for.
I went the other day to look for Boomerang, the Boomerang app for email and stuff. Yeah, that's in there. So I
love that app.
Huh?
I love that app.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Super useful.
Great service. I met the guy that built it once. He was such a nice guy. Really nice. Cool. Moving right along. Bit of a plug, but Hyperfish, Nintex, and ShareGate are sponsoring and have launched this thing called the Global SharePoint and Office 365 Industry Study. So globalsharepointsurvey.com, and you can be in the chance to win $1,500.
Bingo. There you go.
Answer a few questions, help us build some statistics and some blog posts about interesting things going on in the Office and SharePoint ecosystem. Not ecosystem, I guess. Yeah, I guess it is ecosystem. And customers. And you could score yourself $1,500. Should take about 6 minutes to fill out the survey. And we are going to do some reports on it and all that sort of stuff. ShareGate did a really kick-ass write-up about it. We ran the same one last year, and we've left a lot of the questions the same as last year because we're going to do some comparative type stuff this year so we can see what's changing in the industry, what's changing in the ecosystem and customers and things this year. So if you want to chance to win $1,500, you can go blow on Amazon Prime Day or whatever your tool of choice is.
Prime Day's over.
Yeah, I put out this great tweet. I thought it was great, but I laugh at my own jokes too much sometimes.
I do it too.
I said, I just saved myself 100% on Amazon Prime Day by not buying anything.
That is really good.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty funny. I gave myself a pat on the back for that one.
Yeah, golf clap for that one, my friend.
Because people go, oh my God, I just saved $10. And you're like, well, how much did it cost? It was like, well, $3,500. And it's like, wow, you really did. You did great out of that.
Good job there, buddy.
You saved heaps. So yes, anyway, go get yourself $1,500 potentially. Help us out with some questions about SharePoint and Office 365 and things, and we'll publish all the information that will also be interesting for everybody. So yeah.
Very cool.
globalsharepointsurvey.com.
Cool. The link is easy to find, but of course, like all the links that we're doing for our show notes, where you will find them all, or for our show, you'll find them in our show notes.
Yeah, cool.
I got a geeky one here. This is an Azure thing. There's a really cool article that was published around Azure functions, and it talks about something called Azure or durable functions. So durable functions is an extension of Azure Functions and Web Jobs that allows for writing long-running stateful function orchestration code in a serverless environment. So we're familiar with Azure Functions, where we have the ability to, really good for doing quick little responses or quick little API calls or something. But they may not be as ideal, especially if you need to, retain state, or if you need to have something long running going. And what Azure Durable Functions do, it addresses those two issues or those two scenarios. What this is doing is allowing us to create this new kind of a function. It's called an orchestrator function that allows you to do a couple different things that makes it different from what your ordinary stateless function is. So the first thing it lets you do is it allows you to author it in code. You don't use like JSON to define your schema or your designer to go through. There's no schema or JSON designer for designing your stateful workflow. You can also synchronously and asynchronously call other Azure functions and save outputs to local variables. That's a cool capability. And then also automatically checkpoint the progress of whenever the Azure function is waiting, so the local state is never lost if the process recycles or the underlying virtual machine reboots. So the way this is done, this article is going to go through a few things. It's going to talk about a couple different patterns. There's a couple patterns that you can employ in taking advantage of this. One pattern is called function chaining, exactly what it sounds like. One function does some work, then calls another function, then calls another one. And those are all being run in a sequence to each other. Another one is called fan in, fan out. That's a second pattern. And that's when one Azure function calls in, has multiple functions that are run based off that one function you just received. And then when they all complete, then it calls maybe a final Azure function. So think about that as very much like when you do promises in JavaScript, where you have to do like promises.all before you can continue. Then there's a thing about async HTTP APIs, where something starts, you're going to go do some work, other work's going to end up happening, but you don't want a final function to get called until everything else is done that kind of triggered each other from kicking off. So it kind of almost like a callback in a sense.
It's really cool, because one of the things I struggle with when building functions was like, how do you call another one? Like, what do you put in a function? How big do you let the function get? Do you split it into multiple functions? How do you deal with like long running things and stuff like that? So this will really help with sort of clarifying that, making it easier to split things out and break stuff up into smaller functions.
I agree with you. And I think that one of the patterns that they talk about, the last one, it might be probably one of the most impactful ones. And it's, people that have done any stuff around workflow, or, you tried to work with something like Flow. The last one is called human interactions and timeouts. basically. Let me just read the description, and this will really kind of nail it. Many types of process automation often need to involve some sort of human interaction. The tricky thing about involving humans in automated processes is that people are not always highly available, like our code should be, and responsive as cloud services. And so the automated processes have to account for this. So you request an approval, you kind of sit around, wait for somebody to do something, and then once they do it, you either go escalate it or process the approval. So very much like how a workflow works, but it's kind of cool to be able to see that we can build these different things. So I'll have a link in the show notes to this, and we'll see. Everybody can kind of dig into this and take a look and see how it actually works for your scenario.
Nice. Switching gears a little bit from Microsoft to non-Microsoft stuff for a second. GitHub is now running all of their stateless web front end stuff on Kubernetes. So they're all containerized and running on Google's Kubernetes, I should say, container platform, which is kind of cool. Like, that is a big trafficked site, and big trafficked, is that even a word? Anyway, it's a high traffic site, and people really notice when it goes down.
Yeah.
Because half the internet stops working. One tweet from a guy called Aaron Brown, who's at Aaron B. Brown 777. He was late to Twitter. Got put out. He said, "Hey, Kelsey Hightower, if you're surfing GitHub today, you might find it interesting that all of your web bits come through Kubernetes as of today." So that's pretty cool. If there's another good case study for the use of containers and Docker and all that sort of stuff, that's definitely a good one.
Oh, that's a hell of a one. That's a really big win for Kubernetes. So that's one bit of Kubernetes news. Aaron Brown is a I think they call him a software development engineer, or SRE, software reliability engineer.
Site reliability engineer.
Site reliability, that's right, yeah. So he's with Google, and apparently, I'm guessing that he did some work with GitHub and trying to stand this up. And not all of GitHub is on Kubernetes. There's some part about state that is not set up with Kubernetes, but at any rate, it's still a pretty big update. And it comes right on the heels of another update that we had, which is Kubernetes 1.7 came out, which adds a lot of security, storage, and extensibility features that have been motivated by a lot of the widespread production use of Kubernetes from some pretty demanding customers. So some stuff that they do, you can have automatic encryption of secrets. There's audit logs stored by an API server that you have a little more customization into, and also have webhooks that'll call out to your systems when issues kick in. You can also have a network policy API that has been in Kubernetes for a while, but it's been promoted to being stable. There's a bunch of stateful stuff that's in there. There's API integration. There's a container runtime interface that's been enhanced with new RPC calls to retrieve metrics about containers from the runtime. Some really enterprisey kind of stuff that they've added here to Kubernetes, which is really cool to see Kubernetes growing up like this. This is from all the orchestrators. I mean, I know you've got Docker, you've got Docker Swarm from Docker, you've got DCOS from the Apache Foundation. Kubernetes seems to be the one that is really making the most noise and being kind of, I know you guys don't use Kubernetes, I know you guys are on the Docker side, but it's starting to seem like that, that Kubernetes is becoming a preferred one for a lot of different organizations these days.
Yeah, it seems that way for sure. I mean, it offers a lot, right? So it's, and Microsoft are doing work with Kubernetes on being able to bring Windows containers and hosts and all that to Kubernetes. So yeah, they're definitely making moves.
Yeah, cool stuff. The last bit of non-Microsofty kind of news we just to touch on here is that if you are interested on the AWS side, the AWS reInvent conference is now open for registration. It's going to be in Las Vegas from November the 27th through December the 1st. There's a whole lot of stuff about AWS, so that will be very interesting to see all the new stuff coming out about AWS. It's a pretty big conference, man. They've got, they even got a main thing on their website where it talks about, here's how you can navigate the conference. And it appears to be just like last year at multiple casinos and hotels or conference centers in Las Vegas. So they're trying to help you. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, you're going to want to go over to this hotel, and otherwise you want to be over at this hotel. And so pretty big show.
Yeah, I'd like to go along to that. If I used AWS, I'd definitely be going. But it'd be interesting to go. I just don't have a good reason to.
Cool.
Nice.
You got any more news for us?
No, I'm all done.
All out of news.
Yeah.
Do you want to do a pick plethora?
Let's do a plethora of picks.
A plethora of picks. We can do that. Give CodeShip Pro a try. More teams than ever are using Docker and Linux for their .NET applications. CodeShip Pro is a fully customizable, continuous integration and delivery service in the cloud with the best support for any team that is using .NET and Docker together and can run builds on Linux environments. CodeShip Pro comes with ready-to-use integrations for Azure, including Azure Container Service and more. It also offers a free, convenient local CLI tool that allows you to run your builds locally and is the only hosted CI/CD tool that lets you build your own environment, giving you the most control and flexibility no matter what tool or stack you're trying to use. Check out CodeShip Pro's free plan that grants 100 builds per month, unlimited projects, and unlimited users. Open source projects are always free on CodeShip. Visit codeship.com today or check out codeship.com/features/pro to learn more. So how about I go first? I've got a handful. I don't know how many you have, but I've got a stupid number.
I got 2.
You have 2? I have 4. So how about I do 2 and then you do your 2 and then I'll do my last 2.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so my first one, this is a quick one. It's an article on the Azure site, Azure Documentation, or Azure blog. Solve Node.js issues faster with application insights for Node.js. I don't remember if I've talked about this in the past, so I'm just going to do it kind of quick. It's really cool here to be able to have some really easy kind of hooks you put into your Node.js based application and have use the callouts that are in the SDK that Microsoft provides to have calls over to App Insights for you to be able to trace and analyze issues or bottlenecks within your application using App Insights that's available to you also right inside Azure.
Very cool.
And then another one that absolutely has nothing tech related, or you could argue that it does have stuff tech related, when it involves something that is probably one of the most painful things I think in our business, and that is regular expressions. I understand the power and absolutely love what you can.
Shoot me now.
Yeah, I love the power that you can do with regular expressions, but someone's like, I can solve that problem with you and with a regular expression. I'm like, yeah, but now I have 2 problems. So this is something by the BBC. It's called a puzzle a puzzle they put out every day or every other day. It's basically a crossword puzzle, and instead of a word or a phrase, each clue is a regular expression. So you have to complete the puzzle to find the letter matching both the horizontal and vertical regex for each square.
Oh my gosh.
Want to feel stupid? Go check this out.
Yeah, I think I'd rather just punch myself in the head with a brick, to be honest.
It's a good way to learn regex.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I don't know if I ever want to invest the effort. Mainly because I know that I'm just going to suck at it.
Yeah.
And it's like when you use VI, and every time you use VI, you've got to go and search the internet for how to get out of it. Regex is kind of the same for me.
Yeah.
It's like, I need a regex for an email. That's a solved problem, right?
Yeah.
As it turns out, it's not. Yeah. There's a bajillion different regexes for emails, and they all suck slightly differently from each other. So,
whenever I need a regex now, if it's a simple one, I can do it, kinda. If it gets any more somewhat complex to it, I'm always heading straight over to Upwork.com or Fiverr, and I'm just like, hey, I need a regex that does this, and I'll pay somebody to do it for me. And it takes me less time to write the spec, to get people to go through and to send me the regex and pay them than it does for me to figure it out. And the best part is, I don't have the stress and the frustration of feeling dumb.
Yeah, it's a horrible thing. Anyway, the only thing more frustrating than trying to get the perfect email regex is trying to get the perfect phone number regex.
Oh, yeah. Not just one style of phone number, multiple continents and countries and stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean for worldwide use. Yeah. I think they may perfect fission before.
With regex.
Fission, fusion. I'm getting around the wrong way.
Fission.
Yeah, fission reactor. I'm sure we may have fission reactors in our phones before we get a perfect phone number regex.
That's true. That's true. It's because all the smart people are working on a regex.
Yeah, or if anybody can figure out how to use sed with a regex, because I don't know if you've used sed, the command line. Whoever invented that deserves to eat tax for the rest of their life, because it is possibly the shittiest program known to mankind in terms of usability. It's super powerful if you're the 4 people on Earth that can understand it. But anyway.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right.
2 picks for me.
2 picks for you.
Wildcard certificates coming in January 2018 to let'sencrypt.org. So Let's Encrypt is pretty cool, actually. It's a way to get free SSL certificates for your site. But up till now, it's just supported basic certificates for websites and so forth. And they've done that for 47 million domains.
That's impressive.
So far. The web has gone from 40% to 58% encrypted page loads since Let's Encrypt became available in December 2015, which I thought was pretty sweet.
That's very sweet.
How cool is that? So, but yeah, one of the limitations is they don't offer wildcard certificates, which let you secure multiple subdomains. So you might have a top-level domain like andrewconnell.com, but you couldn't also get a certificate for blog.andrewconnell.com and mail.andrewconnell.com, et cetera, et cetera. So now they're coming out with that.
Oh,
pretty sweet, dude.
That's very sweet. Very sweet.
Yeah, really nice. Okay, so that's wildcard certificates from Let's Encrypt. The other one that I've got here is this really cool article, completely non-related, called Breaking into the Buran Graveyard, or Aging Soviet Vehicles Still in Press. So these two dudes trekked across the Kazakhstan steppe, I guess you call it, steppe, to Baikonur Cosmodrome and broke into the hangar that contains the two of the remaining partially built Buran Russian space shuttles from the 70s and 80s, and camped out in the building where two of these vehicles still exist, and flew a drone around inside the building and took some HD footage and photos and all that. And Buran is Russian for snowstorm, I think, is what it means.
Oh.
But basically, the Soviets built a space shuttle in the 70s that looks strikingly similar to the US space shuttle. Like
bigger nose, but yeah.
It's not identical, but it is, to the untrained eye, it looks identical anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of them flew into orbit unmanned. So that was one of the big differences between the space shuttle from the Soviets and the space shuttle from the Americans, was the Soviets could do it autonomously, which was one of the big differences. So basically the Soviets stole the plans and built their own version and sort of improved it in a couple of key areas. One was that they could strap jet engines to it so it could take off from a runway to go between airports, not to fly into space. It took off vertically, like the space shuttle, obviously, but it could take off from a standing start from airport to airport with some jets strapped to the back of it. And it also could lift more. It had slightly wider wing span, and it could also fly autonomously, and it had ejector seats for the people. Anywho, it collapsed. There was one mission that flew into space. The Soviet Union collapsed. The shuttle the Buran that did fly into space, unfortunately was lost when a hangar collapsed after a big snowstorm at Baikonur and was crushed. I don't know where it is today, but I'd like it in my backyard. And
I think it's still there.
Oh, right. Probably under a pile of rubble. Yeah. Anyway, and so the other two, which are sort of, one is 70% complete and the other one's less complete, sit in the building where they were making these things, almost ready to go, and it just covered in like decades of bird poo and dust, basically. But these guys flew this drone around in there and visited it, and it's just mind-bogglingly cool. Like, I just love that stuff.
That is really cool. My jaw hit the ground when I saw this was one of your picks a second ago. This is really slick.
I've been kind of a fan of Buran since about year 2000, right after the Sydney Olympics. I think I've mentioned this on the show before. I was cruising around Darling Harbour in Sydney, and I saw the tail of this aircraft sticking up from behind a building, and I was like, what the hell is that? So I was just walking around. So I walked around behind the building, and sure enough, there was a space shuttle sitting there. And I was like, what the beep?
Yeah.
What is that all about? Anyway, so I went up, it was all roped off and there were tarps over it and all this sort of stuff. And I talked to somebody there and they said, oh yeah, it's a Russian space shuttle. And I had no idea this thing even existed. And they were opening a new display in Sydney. One of the Buran were touring the world. This guy bought it and was putting on these as a museum type of thing. Anyway, so they said, oh, well, the thing's opening in a week, so come back. And so I came back in a week, and I was the only person there. It was like middle of the day during the week or whatever. And I went into this, they built a big tent that covered this thing, and it's huge. Like, if you haven't stood next to a shuttle, you kind of don't really get the scale of these things, but they're freaking enormous. And it's very, very close to the US shuttle. It's slightly larger wingspan, gigantic. Anyway, so I got to hang out with this Buran shuttle. It was one of the ones that didn't fly into space, but was one of the ones it used as an atmospheric test vehicle. So they flew it, but only within the atmosphere. So I got to go and I talked to the guy, and he showed me around, and I got to go sit in the cockpit and all this sort of stuff. And It was just so cool.
I've never heard that story. That's awesome. That's incredible.
Yeah, and so now that particular shuttle is in Germany at a museum, and it's been made a permanent museum piece in Germany at this something museum. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, I want to go visit it again. But yeah, you could walk through the through the payload bay. The guy let me into the cockpit. It wasn't going to be open for people, but it had mid-deck and cockpit, just like the US shuttle, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I'll stop waffling on. I could go on for hours about this thing.
God, that's really cool.
Been following Buran ever since. And so things like there wasn't a lot of information about it until people started poking around in these hangars and going and finding the unfinished ones.
Very cool.
Anyway, those are my 2 picks.
That's all good picks, man. I guess mine aren't if you're a space fan, mine aren't nearly as cool as this. I'm going to switch back to going on the geek side then. Well,
Sure.
I guess we were already geeking out on the space stuff, but I'm going to switch back to the coding geek side. There is a site here. I think it's this guy's blog. It's called blog.sourced.tech. And he wrote a post in the middle of July. It's titled, Analyzing GitHub, How Developers Change Programming Languages Over Time. This is really slick. So he's got a bunch of data of stuff from the open data set that's really available to the community through some program that Google has put together. And he's got access to 4.5 million GitHub users, 393 different programming languages, and 10 terabytes of source code. And the idea that he did here, and this is really interesting, there's a lot of math in this, there's a lot of charts and heat diagrams and stuff, but the gist of the article is that he shows that if you do this kind of a language, then these are the other kind of languages that you kind of go with. So for instance, one of the things that he was able to do, the first chart you kind of come across is a language usage history of a specific GitHub user or of an average GitHub user that was popular, that they use Scala as one of their languages. So in this case here, this graph shows the user's favorite language is Scala, and they stuck with it from January 2012 all the way through January 2015. But during that time, they tried to play with Go for a little bit. They played with Go for about a year, but they didn't stick with it. They just stopped doing all their stuff about a year later. Then they also ran an important project in Java where they spent a lot of time, a lot of commits and stuff that they were doing. But they clearly rather code in Scala because they were using Scala about the same amount as they were using Java at the same time. And once the Java project was over, they dropped it. They stopped doing all Java work altogether. In 2014, they picked up Markdown and spent a lot more time. And going up through 2015, they spent a significant amount of time with Markdown. So it's interesting seeing the data that came from this. You know, what languages did you start with and what languages do you kind of go to? What are the most popular languages?
Yeah.
And if you scroll way down at the very end, the last graph, I don't know what this is called. I think it's called a stationary distribution, but it shows the popularity of languages over time, starting in 2009, going all the way up to 2015. And it shows how C was incredibly popular and Perl was incredibly popular. But then they both kind of went away. And you see things like Ruby getting more popular. You see things like Java and Python getting more popular. You see Swift having a nice little spike in the last 2 or 3 years. Now, This data is about 2 years old, but it's interesting to kind of see how this stuff goes together and what you can do with things like with the different statistics and stuff and researching and deep learning from what people are doing with this. Different languages.
Yeah, that is really interesting. That's cool.
Okay, and then another one here. This one is for you web devs. Google Chrome 59 had some very big updates to DevTools, specifically to DevTools. There's a few of them that are really slick that I think that you should take a look at. And the link here, I'm going to send you to the developers.google.com/web site. And it talks about an update for 59, which was published back in April. But really 59 is what people are really started to use a lot more recently. One of the big things that it does, this one's really slick, is that it has a section where it does code coverage of your CSS and JavaScript code. And so what it basically does is it allows you to turn on a recorder, go to a site, and then stop the recorder. And it basically it'll show and say, hey, here's all the CSS and JavaScript stuff that you loaded that you never called, that never was used on the page. And so you can find ways to go through and say, oh, this library's got a lot of unused stuff. So there's things I can do to kind of maybe spit this stuff out.
Slim it down.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Even a code view to even show like little red lines on the left-hand side. Like when you look at the git difference stuff, you can see the changes. So that's one. You can do full page screenshots from it. So it'll automatically do the scrolling and everything of a big web page and do a complete screenshot of the whole thing.
Ooh. Ooh. I have Snagit for that, but it's kind of useful to have when you don't have that available.
This one, another one here, blocking requests. What happens if all of a sudden you want to test if your CDN goes down? So you can actually block a URL or block a full domain and just say, what happens when S3 CDN kind of shits the bed again on February 28th of 2017? How would that have impacted my site? And refresh the page, boom, doesn't even show up.
Oh, that's kind of nice. So you can test all those sorts of scenarios.
Yeah. And then
that's really cool.
The last one that they have here, this is nice. You know how in Visual Studio Code we have that command palette where you can hit special key combination, just start typing what you want to do and find the operation you want to run?
Yeah.
So Google Chrome now has that. It's called the Unified Command Menu. So you can now get that pop open if you're on a Mac, hit Command O, or on Windows and Linux, Control O, when you have the DevTools open, and just start typing what you want, like do a stack trace, open a file. There's a bunch of key commands for doing this stuff all throughout the Chrome DevTools, but they basically unified it, and it works a lot like the Visual Studio Code one does too. So it's really cool updates to it.
That's sweet, dude.
Yeah. So there's a nice thing is that if you don't want to dig into the description of all these different updates that were there, I skipped one of them, but they have a short little video on YouTube that you can watch a guy explain it over the course of I think it's about like 3 minutes or so. It's a fairly short video.
Gotcha.
I have another cool pick related to this, but that's going to have to wait for next week.
Ooh, leave us hanging.
I am. I'm leaving you hanging. Some really cool stuff.
Nice.
All right, dude. A little bit long episode here, but hey.
Bit of news, quite a few picks.
Yeah, we did. We stayed under an hour, so that's always the goal. Ta-da.
Right on.
All right, man. Good talking to you. And we will see everybody next week.
Likewise. Have a good one.
Bye. Did you like this episode? Please tweet about it and drop a 5-star review in iTunes. Word of mouth recommendations are the most effective ways for us to grow the show, and we'd really appreciate it. If you have a question for us, go to microsoftcloudshow.com/questions, where you can submit it as text or record it as a WAV or an MP3, and provide a link so that we can play your question on the show. Our theme music is brought to you by Keith Ritchie. For more information on Keith's music, head to music.kritchie.com. You can subscribe to us in iTunes and the Google Play Store by searching for the Microsoft Cloud Show, or via RSS at microsoftcloudshow.com, where you'll also find notes of each episode. You can also find us on Facebook, searching for Microsoft Cloud Show, or on Twitter at MS Cloud Show. And finally, sign up to our mailing list by heading over to our website and entering your email to interact with us, participate in upcoming interviews, and other cool stuff. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.